Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into Zechariah chapter 8, specifically verses 1 to 17. Our goal is to explore these ancient promises of, well, peace and restoration and see how they connect, maybe surprisingly, to things we just sort of take for granted every day. Stability, security.
Yeah, and it's crucial to remember the context here. Zechariah is talking to people who've come back from exile. They're physically back in Jerusalem, but things aren't great. The rebuilding, sure, but there's this backdrop of poverty, anxiety, real instability. Verse 10 paints a pretty grim picture, actually. It talks about how before there was no wage for man and every man was against his neighbor. Just chaos, really.
Right. So when God makes these promises, it's not just some, vague hope for the future. It's pitched as a massive turnaround. Verse 12 talks about a sowing of peace, the vine being fruitful, the ground giving produce, the heavens giving dew. It sounds almost idyllic, a direct answer to that previous lack and conflict.
Exactly. And that transformation starts with God's own action and presence.
Right.
He says, I return to Zion. That's in verse 3. And because of that return, Jerusalem itself gets a new identity. It's called the faithful city. It's not just a name change. It signifies a deep spiritual and physical rebuilding. Stability is key.
And what really strikes me, looking at the text, are the very human details of what that stability looks like, verses 4 and 5. It's incredible. The sign of real peace isn't like giant monuments. It's old men and women sitting safely in the streets, with their canes, and kids, boys and girls, just playing freely.
Yeah.
That image, compared to verse 10, where everyone's against each other, it's profound. It says peace is about everyday safety, the absence of that constant grinding fear.
And it totally flips their international reputation, too. Verse 13 says they'll go from being a byword of cursing among the nations, basically, a symbol of failure and disaster, to becoming a blessing. Think about that shift. The remnant, the ones left, they will possess all these things. It's a move from being pitied or scorned to being a source of blessing. Abundance replaces scarcity.
Okay, but let's get into something here. Because if God has returned, like verse 3 says, and he's the one promising all this restoration, the fruitfulness, the dew, why does he then immediately turn around and tell the people, twice actually, let your hands be strong? That's verses 9 and 13. It sounds a bit like, okay, I'll do my part, now you do yours. Isn't it all God's work?
That's a great point. And that's where it gets really practical. The restoration isn't passive for the people. It's fundamentally cooperative. God establishes the conditions for flourishing. That's the return, the promise of fertility, the dew, the order. But the experience of peace and stability, that depends on how the community lives.
So the blessing isn't just handed over, no strings attached.
Exactly. It's more like an invitation. God sets the stage, provides the potential, but the people have to, participate. They have to live in a way that reflects that restoration. It demands transformed living.
Which means that the external stuff, the peace, the security, kids playing it, actually hinges on their internal ethic, how they treat each other.
Precisely. The intentional order God's bringing requires intentional living from them. And verses 16 and 17 spell that out very clearly.
Right, the to-do list for living in this restored community.
Yeah, you could call it that. It's pretty straightforward, really.
Yeah.
First, speak the truth to each other. No more deception. Second, render judgments that are true and, crucially, that make for peace. Justice isn't just about being right. It's about fostering harmony. And third, don't sit around plotting evil against your neighbor and hate false oaths. It's about integrity, right down to your inner thoughts and your word.
So truth, justice, basic human decency and integrity. These aren't just like nice religious ideas. The text implies they are the very things that sustain the peace and security God is offering.
That's the connection. You can't have the external harmony, the safe streets, the fruitful vines, if the internal life of the community is built on lies, injustice, and plotting against each other. God provides the framework, but the people build the reality through their actions.
It really reframes how we might think about everyday stability, doesn't it? Maybe the fact that things generally work, that society functions, isn't just random chance. Maybe it reflects a kind of sustained, intentional design.
I think that's a key takeaway. God isn't just swooping in to fix the circumstances externally. He's forming a people capable of living differently, living in a restored way. The blessings, the safety, the fruit, the dew, they become the natural result when a community actually commits to sowing peace in their own words, their judgments, their relationships.
So, thinking about this, for us, for you listening, if things like stability, friendship, just the basic security of your day-to-day life aren't just accidents, but maybe gifts, part of a larger design, well, today's deep dive kind of leaves us with a question, doesn't it? Are you living like someone who's part of that ongoing restoration project? Are you actively sowing truth and peace in your own life, your own corner of the world? Or are you maybe just waiting passively, hoping the blessings will just sort of fall? Something to think about as you go about your day.